Greetings and salutations. It is I, Mr. Nothing, the museum curator of the weird and the strange, and the host who might be a ghost. Welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all manner of strange and unusual literature that I have found in my travels. Today it is Short Story Tuesday, so I wanted to talk about a short story that's a sci-fi short story. I wanted to continue what I did last week, which was focus on a classic story from a sci-fi-ish author. Last week I talked about last week I talked about I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, which was sci-fi horror by Harlan Ellison, which I enjoyed. And so this week I want to continue the trend by focusing on more sci-fi. This story is about memory fabrication, essentially. It is We Can Remember It For You Wholesale, an interesting title, by Phillip K. Dick. Philip K. Dick, or Philip K. Richard, for those that want me to censor myself, he was a sci-fi author, very prolific. He died in the 1980s, but his work continued far on past that. His work is a lot like Stephen King's, in that it's constantly being adapted into movies and TV shows. Some good examples of this are The Man in the High Castle. He wrote the book for that. It was turned into an Amazon Prime TV show. He wrote The Minority Report. He wrote The Adjustment Bureau. He wrote Total Recall. But those were all under different titles in his books. But that's a source material, and it's so interesting to see someone like King in that regard, to see how they how Hollywood is just like, oh, we need to adapt something. Let's go to Stephen King, or let's go to Philip K. Dick. So that's interesting. And We Can Remember It For You Wholesale has actually been adapted twice into a movie. The first time with Arnold Schwarzenegger in Total Recall, and then in the remake in 2011, I think it was, with Colin Farrell. I've seen the Arnold Schwarzenegger version, but I haven't seen the Colin Farrell version. Although some people have said that it's pretty good, so I might give it a look-see. Philip K. Dick was also a very strange individual. He had a sort of like defining moment that I find hard to explain, that like led him to believe in like a higher form of aliens or some kind. It's really difficult to explain what exactly happened to him without reading more books on the subject. I do believe that a person who explains it very well, though, is Noah from Everyone Who Reads It Must Converse. He did a very good deep dive into some of Philip K. Dick's work, which I will link to in the description. That was actually one of the first video of Noah's that I saw, and it was very excellent. And it actually inspired me to read more Philip K. Dick. So kudos to Noah for inspiring somebody. Okay, so I'll just talk about We Can Remember It For You Wholesale now. So We Can Remember It For You Wholesale, very lengthy title, focuses on Douglas Quayle. He's a low-level clerk who feels kind of dissatisfied with his mundane life, and he dreams of going to Mars. But because he's a low-level clerk, he cannot afford to go to Mars. So instead he seeks out the Recall Corporation, which is a business that specializes in memory fabrication. People can go there and get memories implanted that allow them to live out their wildest fantasies, which seems pretty harmless overall. And after meeting with the sort of head guy in charge, McLean, Douglas decides to implant memories of a time when he went to Mars, and he was a secret agent who had a stealth mission there. So he's essentially getting those memories implanted. However, the technicians point out that when they try to implant the memories, they discover a patch in his mind where those memories previously existed and were erased. So they accidentally reawakened those memories of a time when he went to Mars as a secret agent, which kind of terrifies and scares them. So they send him on his way and give him half a refund. Douglas is kind of catches on to that though, because he still has memories of going to the Recall Corporation, which they would have erased. To really sell the fantasy. Douglas goes home, and his wife is kind of freaked out by his weird talk of having these memories and also not having these memories. So she leaves him, and then a government agent shows up and is there to arrest him. Because, as it turns out, Douglas had his mind wiped from a government assassination mission to Mars, where he was ordered to assassinate a rival Martian political leader. So that he had those mind memories wiped, and when he activated them again, that sort of activated a transmitter in his mind that alerted the government agents so that they could come and fix things. So they're ordered to arrest and or kill him so that they can maintain plausible deniability, and nobody knows that they're ordering assassination attempts on Mars. Douglas tries to escape, but it's futile. So he makes an agreement with the government agency Interplan that if he has his mind wiped again and new memories implanted, he can actually be a free man. And they agree with that, but they decide to make the memories somewhat special because his mundane life caused him to seek out the Mars memories before, and they don't want that to happen again. And after meeting with a psychologist, a therapist, they decide to play on a sort of fantasy he had as a child, where he met with aliens, and those aliens appreciated his kindness, so they agreed not to destroy the human race. And as long as Douglas is alive, the human race survives, and so that produces a feeling of specialness within Douglas and doesn't cause him to reach out or anything like that, or seek out new memories. So when they go to implant those memories, once again, they discover that those memories had previously existed and were deleted, presumably by the aliens. So that's a little bit interesting right there. And the story ends with McLean noting that he has a box full of fake artifacts that he plans on giving to Douglas to sell the memory. So he's just like, oh, we're not going to need this now, especially this letter of commendation from the UN, because that letter of commendation should come anytime now, because Douglas has actually achieved peace. And the the sort of FBI Interplan people note, well, they can't kill Douglas now, because if they did, that would mean doom for the human species, supposedly. And that's the end of the story there. Overall, I would say I loved We Can Remember It For You, Wholesale. It is definitely one of the more interesting short stories that I have read so far. And definitely love the twist at the end. I feel like it's not much of a spoiler because it came out in the 1960s. And you can still... I kind of knew how the story would go, and even I didn't feel like anything was spoiled for me there. I still enjoyed it there a lot. So, yeah, I definitely recommend you can you read it if you go find it. Some interesting things that I noted is that noted as I read it was what Philip K. Dick appears to be saying about memory. In particular, as someone with a background in psychology, memory is something that I have a lot of knowledge of. But memory is not without, controversy, and memory research, at least, is not without controversy in the world of psychology, especially because there's a lot of hubbub about whether or not memories can be implanted. In counseling, sometimes people will talk about, they had memories of a time where they were assaulted or raped in the past, and it turns out later that those memories never happened. So can they be implanted? That research is still going on, and there's also a lot of questioning about whether or not memories are completely reliable, because a lot of eyewitness testimony is subjected to scrutiny now because of how fallible people can be, especially as it as it pertains to memory. So I think that's fascinating, and I love the way that Philip K. Dick talks about memory in this story. This is especially important because, much like with Harlan Ellison, when I talked about him last week, he wrote about AI in the 60s. Philip K. Dick wrote about memory in the 60s, a time when there was some research in psychology, but not a whole lot. So this is kind of a very prognostic leap forward, which Philip K. Dick was kind of known for. He was known for kind of predicting a lot of future technology. In Minority Report, precognition, which scientists are actively trying to work on. Silicon Valley wants to be able to predict crime, which I think is sketchy, but we'll talk about that later. For Philip K. Dick to be talking about that at the time, it's he does invite a lot of questions. One question I think that pops up is, how can this be used for evil? Because if you recall in the story, Douglas was used by the government agency to assassinate a rival political leader, and then he had his mind wiped. How many times has the government done this before, and who else have they done it with? Has the government implanted false memories, or have they taken away memories so that people aren't political dissidents anymore, so that people forget that they did bad things? It leaves a lot of room for one to guess that in the wrong hands, this technology could be used for evil, for to manipulate the public and make sure that those who hold power keep it. So that's something that I thought about as I read it. And Philip K. Dick doesn't say that directly, but his writing leads you to those questions, which I think is a facet of any good writer, for them to leave you with those questions and to leave you wanting more. So yeah, that's what I got out of the story, and I definitely a lot to think about with memory, and it's one that I won't be forgetting anytime soon. I do think that Philip K. Dick made the most of the short story format, where sometimes you have authors just droning on for a little bit and not capitalizing on all that's available, but Philip K. Dick does seem to capitalize on all that's available. I would love to read more of his short stories, and even his novels, to get a feel for what else he's talking about. Because if he's saying this, what else is he saying that still holds true? I absolutely enjoyed it. Definitely recommend. I'll put a link in the description so that you can find it. And that's about all I have to say about We Can Remember It For You, Wholesale. It was a good book, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you want to hear more about possibly implanting false memories, and leave a comment if you read the story and want to discuss it with me. But otherwise, I bid you a pleasant day in your weird travels. Goodbye.